Our first presenter for this lead marketing conference from CPG Matters will tell us how the CPG industry is using artificial intelligence. Joining me now is Joel Cartwright, Industry Principal with Vistex. Joel, the podium is yours.
Thanks, John. I very much appreciate being here. It's always a pleasure to speak at the Lead Marketing Conference. As John mentioned, my name is Joel Cartwright. I'm an industry principal or the industry principal for consumer products at Vistex. I've been in the consumer packaged goods business for more years than I really want to count, but 25 plus years in different finance, accounting, and sales operations roles. Companies like Sara Lee Foods, Sunny Delight Beverage, and Kimberly Clark. The last few years have been on the software side, trade promotion management, optimization software, doing implementations, product development, support, solution engineering, product management. And one topic that is really hot right now, of course, is probably the biggest understatement of the year, is all about artificial intelligence. So as a person, I keep hearing throughout the industry, artificial intelligence is going to solve this, artificial intelligence is going to do that. So one aspect I keep asking is, well, how's it going to do it? How's it going to do it? What are the components of it? And one of the words that struck me when I was doing research and working on our AI initiatives at Vistex, phrase smart automation really struck me as important within the consumer products industry. So today we'll talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we'll kind of define that. And this will kind of refresh on what that means. What AI means to data science and modeling. And then we'll do an introduction as what I mentioned, smart automation. What is that? And then talk about the Vistex approach to smart automation. Of course, we'll leave time for some questions. So let's go ahead and define AI ML. You hear that term all the time. And what does it mean? What does it essentially do? So essentially, it's a very simple thing. And I always like to use this example is it's artificial intelligence, it's learning. It's connecting and different sources of information and reasoning out a couple of things. When it hears something or is asked a question, like how on the pod bay doors, artificial intelligence has to interpret what it's being asked and then locate the source of where the information would be, learn continuously on where to go to get this information. For example, Dave here is asking, open the pod bay doors. In this case, Hal would have to go to the door locks and open them up, but he'll learn after time to do this. So it's really the component of learning. So you hear the phrase artificial intelligence, machine learning all the time. They're kind of mashed together. So I always like to define, is artificial intelligence, machine learning, are they the same? Well, kind of. So AI is a computer software that mimics in many ways how humans think and reasons and so forth. Now, what we're used to, specifically in the consumer products industry, is machine learning. That's where the whole trade promotion and optimization components have come in. And those are comprised of data science, just to create algorithms to do sort of A/B comparative testing to predict what a consumer will buy when it has a certain merchandising condition, price point, etc. But now you introduce the concept of AI on top of machine learning. Because machine learning is essentially a very complex and manual process of putting together algorithms. But it's essentially, machine learning takes those algorithms and it learns from historical experiences and then how to apply those to solve a particular problem. In this case, the problem is predicting consumer outcome. So with machine learning, you're having multiple applications of it currently in the industry. It's looking about data visualization. It's talking about structure of data discovery. It's classifying images. It's looking at different population growth predictions and so forth. So it's being utilized, machine learning, in multiple applications, specifically when we start narrowing it down into consumer products. It's trying to get that in real time and taking all this information and getting it into real time. So now you have the component of machine learning. It's using algorithms, using data, and you have artificial intelligence that's out there as well, which is machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. Now, as I mentioned, there's the data science component of machine learning. So now the expectation, the first step is to apply AI to how the data science component works. So let's talk a little bit about this. So what we're trying to do with artificial intelligence is take what we're doing currently, the manual machine learning process that you have a data scientist putting together, and having fused that together with artificial intelligence to really get what's called data science automation. Because you have these machine learning, you have these data scientists that are taking math and equations, and they're looking at different knowledge domains and so forth to pull in those data science components to the algorithm. So they're writing an algorithm that will contain different data sources. So the first step is to write, essentially maybe to write the algorithm first. I have to say, I need this data point, I need this data point, I need to add this weight to the data point, and what the expectation of the model will having to do this. The different data sources, once the model is created, has to go out to the data sources. These could be external databases. This could be different areas that may be outside of the firewall. And then they need to pull all that into a complete centralized point from the data, how it's extracted, and then run that through the algorithm in order to predict what the outcome was going to be. So you need that data, you need the predictive outcome, but you also need the understanding of what the model needs to predict and for what process. So the data scientist in machine learning has to manually do this. There's a lot of, once the model's built and once the data has gone through that, there's a lot of testing and tweaking that has to occur. So the data scientists have a tremendous amount of work that has to occur. There's time spending seeing if they're the right set of features and the parameters within it. I have to see there's data storage. Is there models that, of course, the models have to be continuously tested. Data changes, seasonality, and so forth. So I have to compare those models and how they perform. I have to continually change the models or adjust them, because ultimately what I want to do is improve the accuracy of the model. So this is where AI takes over. So historically, the data scientist, the person, is going to have to do this extraction, the data testing. But what AI can do, it's going to take over, or it can take over the management of that model lifecycle. It's going to track and record all the query and experiments of the data that are going in. It's going to code and format that into basic runs within the platform to make it more of an out-of-the-box approach, less of a manual touch. The ability to then deploy it more with different models serving in different environments, AI can say, all right, I can fine tune this model to model based upon what, say, we want to predict for compared to washing machines versus lettuce and vegetables. Because it's the same thing. You're looking for a forecasted outcome, but the analysis approach has to be different because it's two different types of products and two different types of consumers. And ultimately, AI can manage that data storage, identify where there are outliers or anomalies within the data, and help manage the models to make sure that they capture those anomalies as part of within the central repository. So one component of artificial intelligence can do is essentially help with the data scientist group and apply what we're currently doing and automating that process more. This will allow to increase the accuracy of the models for its prediction, number one, allow it to manage more data sources within the model as well. The more data I get, the more data components I have, I can then make sure that the model is accurate. So the first thing we need in any sort of AI application or any sort of machine learning application, I need a use case. We talked about this before. The common use cases that we're seeing currently in the consumer products industry is I need to predict the incremental volume. And with the different combinations of merchandising conditions, when we talk about a merchandising condition, it's a promoted price point, it's a feature, it's a display. What I'm asking the models to do is to predict what the incremental volume is going to be when I'm at a certain price point, and be able to have the end user do different scenarios, different scenarios around the frequency and depth. So it's really just taking those few merchandise conditions and then doing what if scenario capabilities. So this is really data that's consumption data historically that is used for a consumer focused plan. So the use case is what I want to understand is for a manufacturer, I need to predict my base volume. Who's my base customer? As I mentioned too, I need to predict what my incremental volume is going to be for coinciding merchandising conditions. I need to understand the different scenarios of those merchandising conditions, the combinations that will deliver the most profitable volume. As a retailer, I need to conduct, promotion schedules for multiple different products. As a manufacturer, I know this is a luxury, but I have just one product set or one product grouping, or maybe a couple of categories I have to worry about. As a retailer, though, I have to construct completely new promo schedules for multiple categories. I have to understand and encompass the existing promotion schedules that I've already set up with my vendors to make sure that they align with my objectives as well as theirs. And then optimize a promotion calendar, those rules, specific promotion growth periods and areas. So these certain vendors can participate. So these are the use cases. Here is for a manufacturer, what's the right combination of merchandising conditions that I can bring into the fold? From a retailer, what's the right promotions? When should I run them? Who should I have participate in the promotions? So right now, our machine learning can take the historical data and do that. But what we want to, what we're understanding at those traditional promotions, that what we 2 for $5 and 2 for $6 and what the retailer wants to run, they're just not working. They're just a little bit out of date. So as a manufacturer and a retailer, I have to start bringing in new strategies for promotional activities. I have to be able to make a consumer connection. You'll hear about shopper marketing and shopper connections and so forth, making a more personalized approach to promotional activity for my consumer. I need that from the manufacturer, and the retailer needs that as well. The manufacturer is in a tough spot. I've got that same trade dollars that I can throw at it, but I have to have a different combination of promotional tactics. The retailers are going to be asking the manufacturers for more money. I need to do this type of promotional activity because it's really, I need to get in touch with my consumer and my shopper. So what AI will do is as I mentioned before, let's just take a step, expand further. Let's look at other data sources outside of syndicated data that would allow to bring into the model that AI can manage. Are there hot topic blogs? Are there influencers on YouTube, on Instagram, and so forth that certain groups follow? There's social media chatter, different sort of locations, schematics, geographics, photos, everything that's out there that can be related to my products that are seen by the consumer, how the consumer shops through the web. The expectation is as the machine learning has its limitations, AI can expand the capability by automating the ability to to bring in other data points into the model and manage the model to make the predictions and the promotional activity hyper-focused to the consumer. Because I need to create that relationship with the consumer. So by bringing in those other areas of data points, I can create better deal offerings that may be more exciting to the consumer. I could have purchase combinations of products. This information can help consumers discover new products and help consumers with AI to say, okay, this is what you need. So when you're walking the store on the handheld of the app, oh, don't forget to buy this because you searched for a recipe related to beef stroganoff. So don't forget to buy your certain ingredients for beef stroganoff. And then if you're using those different social media platforms, search engine, web blogs, again, I'm searching for a beef stroganoff recipe. I need to pull that into it, as well as instant digital deals and some leaving items in a digital basket. That's always a very powerful component for Amazon. Hey, you left this out there. Don't forget about that. So all that information needs to be pulled into the model, and AI can start learning and start managing those different components, taking the data scientists out of the fold. Because what both the manufacturer is looking for, what the retailer is looking for, is that perfect promotion, consumer focused. There's new products coming in the marketplace. There's different customer behavior and trends that will help me as the manufacturer, help me as the retailer take advantage of, so I can then heighten the consumer process experience. There's also the component of it reduces the amount of risk related to new products or new points of distribution. I can take all this information, put it together. Is that new product going to work? This is heavily being utilized currently in the cosmetics industry. Because it's so costly to come up with different cosmetics and cosmetic packaging and so forth. So AI can take those different media outlets, different data components to say, okay, here's what's trending, this shade, this type of the product, this type of packaging, this type of consumer. This type of consumer may come up with the whole chatter, and AI may come up with a whole new product combination that then the cosmetics industry can then take that and put to new product without running the risk of bringing a product into the marketplace that no one wants to buy. So this dramatically improves the success rate of new products. It also helps with the omni-channel components, as the amount of investment in trade spending is going back and forth between online and brick and mortar. It helps the manufacturer understand where they need to invest. So what this is all doing, again, as I mentioned, it's hyper-personalized shopping, customer experiences, helping shoppers find products that match the particular attributes that they're looking for. So it's not just what they purchased in the past, it's what they need to purchase, or helping them understand what you need to shop for and helping them introduce them to new products. So that's what AI and really what the consumer products is doing currently with machine learning. So, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I keep seeing everywhere, AI will solve this, AI will do that. So I always ask myself, well, I understand how it will predict, but what else can it do? What are there other applications? And if so, how is it going to do that? So this comes back to what I was talking about before, smart automation. It's taking something, a manual business process or some sort of business process that's run currently. How can we make that smarter? Now, you're already seeing this in emails. When you start to type an email, it starts to finish that sentence for you. So that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. That's what we're talking about, kind of the introduction to smart automation. To whom it may concern. You write in to whom, and you got that may concern afterward. So that's AI. It's learning what you're learning. It's learning those different experiences and starting to help you. So let's take that a step further into business processes. So smart automation, what I like to call it, it's the next evolution of a term we've been hearing about as well in a long time. It's the digital transformation. So let's talk a little bit, just a refresher on what digital transformation is. In the consumer products industry, I've been in for years. It always amazes me that people are still doing things manually, managing $1 billion trade budget in Excel, managing incentive allowances and trade spending and accruals and so forth. Financials that are impacting and represent the second biggest line on the P&L, they're still doing manually. One person has that Excel spreadsheet. Where manufacturers that are, look for customers or come to us, they're looking for that digital transformation. How can I automate a process, and have calculations done without any sort of manual intervention by talking to other systems? So this needs to take place moving from Excel or back of the napkin type of accounting into a digital transformation across an IT ecosystem. Now, what I mean by the next evolution is we've digitalized a business process transformation. So now let's sprinkle in a little artificial intelligence, taking the business process needs of end users to the next level and predict when and how, even with a digital transformation, there has to be some sort of manual intervention because things are not perfect. So what the AI can do is predict and reduce the amount of manual intervention, further automating a process. So, we typically see on a digital transformation, a great example is claims validation. You have 1,000 claims or deductions that are come in. You still have to maybe touch 500 of them or 400 of them. Is artificial intelligence say, well, what I've learned in the past, I can solve that for you. So it's really smart automation is the first step, is helping to reduce that manual intervention that's still occurring with a digital transformation. Now, you ask, well, why all the urgency AI? Why all the urgency of smart automation? What's driving the need is that manufacturers are being forced to do more with less. There's a labor shortage. There's qualified personnel. There's cost constraints, margin erosion, volatility in the marketplace. What they're also driving the need is office resources. They're siloed, poor allocations across the organization. You've got too many people in sales or not enough people in sales, and you have too many people in sales and not enough people in the back office or operation. Paper and Excel-based inspections and maintenance, there's no analysis. As I mentioned, this is encompassing that digital transformation. When there's no analysis, that gives way to revenue leakage. That gives way to margin erosion. If something's getting missed, you're giving a price to a customer that you shouldn't be. There's no analysis occurring. And even with Excel, there's no analysis. You're having revenue leakage. I guarantee it. There's really no collaboration and no quality checks with the suppliers, with both the buy side and the sell side. And what I mean by the buy side is from a commodity acquisition for raw materials, even on the sellout side. There's no quality checks because ultimately none of this is in real time. So all these components that I've described here are driving revenue leakage. They're seeing there's revenue leakage, there's margin erosion, there has to be. And I keep seeing it year over year. The biggest thing I see in our customers say, especially as it relates to personnel and staff, I have a staff requirements of 6-7 people to manage this process. Right now, I only have 3 people doing it because I'm waiting to hire, or I can't hire those 3 other folks to fill those seats. They're just not available. So I know that things are getting missed because 3 people are trying to do the job of 6. So things are getting missed and there's margin erosion and there's leakage. So as a manufacturer, or somebody in the position where you want to create some sort of smart automation, you've maybe gone through the digital transformation or you're going through the digital transformation journey and you're set to or want to evolve into that next stage. So how do you get started? There's a lot of processes out there. So how do you get started? So the most important thing to do is to start identifying all these redundant processes. Within organizations, being retailers, manufacturing, one of their operations, there is a redundant process. There's, am I reviewing invoices and I'm doing cash application and creating short deductions and so forth. Claims validation, incentive allowance validation on invoices. Am I doing customer service to make sure that purchase orders and invoicing for full trucks versus half truck there's so many different redundant processes that are occurring. So what we talk about at Vistex a lot is there's a lot of overlapping contracts. There's a validation that has to occur. There's purchasing incentives and through a distribution chain. So somebody has to manually, either in Excel, has to go in and say, okay, based upon the contract overlapping and the validation, are they getting the price point or they deserve based on the contract? Did they purchase enough? Did they get the incentive that they're given the off invoice allowance because they met the volume incentives that were put in? See, these are processes that manufacturers who come to us, they want to automate. So these are insights. What they're wanting to do is say, hey, I only have 3 people to do this. So I need to understand when I need the manual intervention. How can I reduce that? So first thing you have to do is identify those redundant processes. The second thing is, okay, I've identified the process. What do you want to do? You need to define your desired outcome. And the steps that I'm taking here is this is documenting a use case, and we'll define that a little bit more. But this is documenting a process, documenting what you want to do, because ultimately you need to present this to an automation software provider. You need to present this to a group that's going to say, okay, hey, I have the artificial intelligence. I have the components that are necessary to solve for this. So the second step is define your desired outcome. These are pretty simple. Replace something manual within the organization, processes, activities through automation. I need to, integrate internal technology components because I'm getting all these data from different systems. Or I need to quickly scale up my business. I only have so many people. I can't get enough people, and my business is booming. So, I need to help increase the production capacity or some sort of product or something like that. I need to develop, because I know there's revenue leakage occurring, there's margin erosion, better insight and analysis. And I need to organize that data. But more importantly, I need to quickly make processes smarter so I can be more efficient and apply what I find and be more strategic through analysis. And ultimately, really important thing is improve the process the completion of the process, speed, and accuracy. But more importantly, and sometimes this is dropped, I want to increase the experience that the staff and stakeholder who's over that process is experiencing. So if I'm providing the analysis, everything's in real time, its process is closing faster, that's a desired outcome that you're wanting to do with automation, smart automation. So I talked about it early on, what we're applying the artificial intelligence component on the planning side, predicting and describing consumer behavior. If you recall, I had that use case. So before you go to a consulting group or the AI software folks or what have you, how to automate the process, you got to build a use case. So it needs a use case. It needs something to get started, because to the data scientists, the artificial intelligence folks, it's all about just data. So we need to understand. So in my years in the software business, and specialty and trade software, I wore the hat of a product manager. What a product manager does is they determine what functionality goes in the software and what that functionality is going to solve for. And it starts, with a simple user card, a user story. It's a 1 to 2 sentence user story, which defines the need. And it sounds silly, but as a settlement reconciliation manager or an accounts receivable manager, I need to augment and improve the claims validation process. I need to close the accounts receivable transactional component on the general ledger. I need to do this to make it more automated and less manual intervention to prevent revenue leakage. So it's a simple 2-sentence card. Who is the user? What are you wanting to do? And what's the desired outcome? It's a very simple. So now the artificial intelligence sees, okay, in order to do this, I need those certain components. So the step is to develop a user card, which would be basically the first sentence in your use case. Once that use case is defined, you need to, as I mentioned, document the process from beginning to end. Document the process and define the data points that are occurring or touching or needed or required within that process. And creating a workflow matrix, identifying most importantly, the manual touch points. And then highlighting the system data that's required, internal data, external data. And then highlight redundancies. I'm having to do this multiple times. Go to this site, go to this site, go to this site, go here, go here. Highlighting redundancies within the process documentation. And it's a simple 1-page process documentation guide that you can display on your use case. Now, once you've identified the user story, once you've identified the data points, you want to say, okay, how can AI be applied? How will AI automate the process to increase the productivity? What you want to say is, how will AI do this? It'll say, I can eliminate redundancy. Okay, that's a big component of this use case. I can gather external information. AI can compare and contrast all this digital content to tell you, okay, these, and call out anomalies. It can help define the expectations of the validation of the work in the work queue, highlighting it. So you can say, all right, make sure when I put this into AI, into the software, saying, make sure you call out this exception. And the AI component will start learning. You're right. It'll start making sure it's checking that. But most importantly, in the outcome and how AI is applied, it'll help predict and intervene any sort of exceptions and reduce exceptions in the future. So it starts to streamline and smart automate that process. Very similar to, again, I start writing an email, say, I'm going to anticipate what your final sentences are. So it saves time for the end user. So it's essentially reducing those sentence expectations for manual intervention. Once you have all this use case as well, you have this process documentation, how is AI applied, you have to put some sort of success criteria, because any sort of change in business process, you have to say, is it working? If it's not working, if it's not working, obviously there's either a problem with the model or something with the error in the use case. So you need to set some success criteria. So the task or process, the automation, you want to say, all right, I want to set a reduction in processing time. I want to see over the next, month, week, month, day, quarter, what have you, a gradual 5% reduction in processing time. Just understand what the expectation is. Start to see and identify, because you'll see this when you start doing the process documentation and the touch points. You'll start to identify two potential revenue leakage points. And then you can start to see how the revenue is leaked out and then set parameters. All right, I see the costs starting to go down. So you can start to identify and put those outlines in the data points, the revenue leakage components, but you say, I want to start to see those decline, but I don't want to add staff to it. And most importantly, increasing the productivity using the agreed upon workforce productivity metrics. This process took 38 hours a week. I want to be able to reduce X amount over a time period, and that'll have to be tweaked too. You don't know until you start seeing the outcome, but set a reasonable expectation on the time spent on these value-added tasks, and start to see that reduction. So it's important to set a success criteria when going through this. So the last component, you've got all these steps together, you put together the use case, you've identified the process, the success criteria. You're ready to start putting a smart automation plan in motion. Now, there's some other things you may want to occur, because this could be a small group internally within an organization. So you may want to start getting other folks within the organization involved, because you need to understand your organizational readiness for AI. Because I've mentioned there are multiple data points. There's going to have to be an investment in automation processes and software in order to do this. So you have to understand your organization's AI readiness. So you also want to speak to, because you have software providers currently, talk to them about their talk to your current application providers and understand where they are with AI. It's a very common question that we get here all the time. What's your AI plan? Where you want to go with this? What's going on with this? So talk to your current providers and say, what's your AI plan here? How do you want to go with this? What can you do to help me with this AI component? And ultimately, too, as I mentioned, data is very important. So you have to understand your data availability internally, externally. Internally, customers struggle with a central repository because they have multiple systems that may manage processes. So, the digital transformation, that's a key component here. Am I making a complete clean core and a nice clean IT ecosystem so data can be stored, it can be in real time. So I need to understand the data availability, both internally and, more importantly, externally. So how can I make sure I have that data is available from internally and externally from those sources? So you need to understand those components to put that smart automation plan in motion. So we've talked a lot today about AI. Again, the key takeaway here, how we're approaching AI at Vistex, is really two components. In our customer planning, consumer planning piece, number one. Number two is automating the data science component to using AI to make it more out of the box, more flexible across industries. So how can AI do that? We're also looking at ways to do smart automation process. Always smart automation. Again, the good way to remember it is I'm typing that email and it's helping me finish the email. So one thing I do want to call out, it's Vistex. This is our 25-year anniversary, based upon our founder, Sanjay Shah, who tragically recently was no longer with us, but his vision came about 25 years ago. And really, we want to celebrate this because Vistex, Sanjay always said, it's all about, you can have vision, but vision is nothing without execution. So that's where the company name Vistex came from. It's vision. You have to have execution in order to have a vision. So thank you very much for time. I guess we can take some questions now too, John.
Yes, absolutely, Joel. We have a series of questions that came in. The first one, what obstacles do you see organizations will have to overcome to use AI?
The biggest one we always see, and I said it too, is data readiness, and where you are in your digital transformation. So where customers see the obstacles are, when they start to look at the requirements needed for data and sort of this, they see I don't have access to that. It's not in real time. The system that relies and has a good integration capability. So the obstacles we're seeing is data availability and an IT cohesiveness of your applications across the IT ecosystem. Because for a long time, manufacturers, retailers, what have you, the kind of, let's say, process procedure. The expectation is I'm going to gap fill a process with an individual application, which at the time that was good. But as technology evolves, there needs to be more of an IT cohesiveness. So where customers struggle is the data availability and a complete digital transformation.
Okay. Next question. Is it the expectation that AI will completely eliminate manual processes? That's a good question.
I There's no way. There's just too many anomalies in the world. I mean, I always, when we talk about when COVID, when there's that huge demand of toilet paper, AI can't, it can't interpret that. It's not going to be able to understand that. It'll never get to that point. So you're always going to have some sort of manual intervention, some sort of manual component, because it's not a perfect world. And history not only sometimes repeats itself, but not all the time. So there's always going to be a requirement for manual intervention. Nobody's job is going to be at stake.
Okay. Next one. What's the best way to prioritize an AI investment?
Really, the best way to price is based upon you look at it two ways. There's a low hanging fruit approach. This is the most basic process. I can build a pretty easy use case, and AI aligned to that will solve a good deal. So there's the low hanging fruit approach. There's also, once you go through the use case development and the steps that I've outlined here to identify what is, you could assign a revenue component to it, a revenue leakage component, and prioritize based upon either the margin impact or the financial impact. So there's a couple ways to look at it. Is there a process that's simple enough that we can document that could be a low-hanging fruit that AI could accomplish and kind of set the foundation for process automation, smart automation going forward? Or we can look at it from a revenue perspective and what's the biggest bang for our buck from a revenue leakage, plug, or increase perspective.
Okay. The last question that I was wondering about myself. Do you see AI mainly used for planning or process solutions?
That's hard to say. It could be right now. It's pretty widely. It seems to be more widely accepted on the planning piece, and I really customers have really only started, especially your bigger manufacturers, larger retailers, have started to really touch that through encompassing social media and things like that. Um, I think eventually business processes will get to that point, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time, and it'll be ultimately at the end of the day probably start to equal out as far as a utilization standpoint.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions we had, Joel. Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Certainly cleared up a lot of questions that I had, and I'm sure others had about AI and what's the next steps forward. So thank you very much. And for more information about this topic or to continue the conversation with Joel Cartwright, you'll see his email address on the screen. You can also reach him on LinkedIn. So thank you very much, Joel.
Thank you, John. Pleasure speaking today.